not surprisingly, one of the biggest challenges I've encountered of the writing of the scholars in the global science project is lack of specificity. I keep circling sentences and noting, this sentence is a conclusion. Where is your supporting proof? Be specific. Add specifics. The emails from them are now full of jokes. Okay, be specific, I know, be specific. And I do it over and over, sentence by sentence. It's simply a different approach. It's not better, it's just different. Another challenge for Russian scholars is that what is interesting to them may not be new or interesting to the reader. And in English, only the reader's needs count. What the reader thinks is interesting is irrelevant to the reader. The reader is a busy person who wants to read papers with new information, new theories, new methods, or enhanced approaches that will help him or her with his or her work. Therefore, a paper in English has to be a self-contained universe. Everything in it must be explicit, even if the reader already knows the information, because every fact, every detail, every definition and explanation must be in the right place, in the right section, to create a perfect, almost mathematically exact proof. So the second point, important point, is that all papers in English must offer something both new and important to the international literature. And therefore, I urge Russian universities to invest in subscribing to all the major journals in the various fields they teach, so that their students and faculty can know what theories, methods, or other research have been published up to the moment they hit the send key. Indeed, in the Global Science Project, 2 participants were doing their final check in the latest research in international relations and political science journals, only to discover that somebody else had just published a paper on the same topic with a bigger data set. As a result, they had to throw the paper out and start all over, which often happens in international relations. If you're not quick and you're not the first one to get your paper out, somebody will beat you to it. But this is a worst case scenario. The best case is when a Russian scholar can honestly write, quote, "This is the first paper to apply the theory of X to an analysis of Russian data from blah, 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 blah." And journals are always looking for something new and important. But you have to sell the paper. You have to tell the reader why it's important. The reader isn't supposed to guess. So, what is new and important depends not only on the perspective of the writer, but also of the top thinkers in the field. One participant in the Global Science Project worked extremely hard on applying a specific method of analysis to certain types of political relationships within the Russian Federation. I thought it was an interesting paper. However, both of the reviewers, there were 2, sometimes there are 4, both reviewers said, well, yes, this is interesting, but how does this particular model tell us something important that we don't already know from the model we're currently using? In other words, even though the scholar's model was new and interesting, it was not important enough in the context of international literature. So again, I stress that from the start of their PhD studies, or earlier, even at the undergraduate level, if you know that these students are on an academic track and aiming at a PhD, all students must have access to all the English language literature in their field. And universities need to subscribe to, say, Routledge, Wiley and Sons, Taylor and Francis, Elsevier, Sage UK, and a great many university presses that publish in the UK, US, Canada, etc. Because only then can their students and faculty keep pace with the literature as it is daily or weekly or monthly evolving. But where and how does the English academic writer let the reader know that his or her work is new and important? The where is simple. This information must be carefully framed and presented within the first 3 paragraphs of the paper. American linguist John Swales has identified the most common pattern for research papers as a 3-part pattern that he calls CARS, all in caps, C-A-R-S. It's easy to remember, and it stands for creating a research space. I like to think of it as carving out a research space. If you imagine the literature as a huge cement block, and you want to find something missing in a chip and carve out a little hole in it for your paper to go so that your paper can become part of the literature. And the pattern is very simple. You first establish a territory, then you establish the niche, and then you occupy the niche with a general purpose statement. So in English, this is very clear. For Russian students, this was a little confusing because Russia is a huge place. And when I say territory, my students think from, Kaliningrad to Khabarovsk. And no, if you watch my hands again, please, this is the field of political science. Your paper cannot cover the whole field. Your paper covers a small territory within the field. So, for example, most papers on the subject of X focus on the relationship of A and B. Okay? That's the small territory with it. You can't write a paper about everything. You have to keep it focused. The second part is the niche. But you not only have to give, the niche is where you found the spot that something is missing in the literature that you have to add, and you have to sell it as important. So then, to do the niche, you might say, however, very few papers, or no papers, or studies, focus on the relationship between B and B plus 1, comma, a relationship critical to our understanding of the important processes of LMNOP. So now you've told the reader that nobody's looked at X, and X is important. Do not expect the reader to figure it out on his or her own. The writer's job is a kind of PR. You have to sell your own paper. And then to occupy the niche, you simply say, this paper analyzes, using data from Russia and following the theory of XYZ, this paper analyzes. And all of this setting the scene with the territory and establishing the niche and telling the reader what this paper will do in broad terms. Then you can get more specific, more specifically. All of this must be in the first 3 paragraphs of the paper. And it's a skill, but anybody can learn it. You just study how the best writers do it and copy it and practice it, and it works. So again, we see a very straightforward movement, both of framing and of arguing, from the general to the specific to the even more specific of the writer and his or her work in particular, with no room for any digressions. Territory, niche, occupy niche. The more I think that Russian professors encourage their students to read widely in English in their fields and to do structural analyses of the order of information and their methods of presentation, the better their chances of publication success.